Where did you get that belief that having herpes makes you unworthy of love, dirty, disgusting, like you should be ashamed of yourself, like you made a mistake, like you slept around, even if you didn't? Because whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not, we're constantly being programmed. TV, movies, your parents, religion, this video, every single thing is programming us from the moment we're born to the moment we die. And typically, we're not being programmed by external perspectives for our own benefit. If you really think about it, we're constantly being manipulated, to benefit someone. Maybe I'm even manipulating you, or maybe you're manipulating me. I have no idea. But whether it's buy this next thing, or whether it's, you're not good enough, or whether it's, oh, you have this very, very common virus that most of planet Earth has, here's how you should feel about yourself. And I get it. Thinking is hard. I don't like to think. We don't like to think. And honestly, a lot of life is just sort of going along what everyone else does. The problem is that when you look at what everyone else does, and you don't want that, you probably shouldn't go along with that after a while. And it may feel a little bit like you're uncomfortable, like, wait, why am I going along with this new thing? So if you give me a few minutes right now, I'm going to try to reprogram your mindset so you can thrive post-diagnosis and not just survive. When I thought about making this video, it occurred to me there's probably 3 different categories of brainwashing or programming that impact us, whether you have herpes or you don't have herpes. And the first one is essentially all about the stigma and all about prevalency and transmission and all sorts of things like that. And what I think is a big issue for some people, and at least it was for me at the beginning of my diagnosis, is that we don't ever want to question our beliefs. We don't want to look into how to improve ourselves post-diagnosis or how to improve our mindset, because the easier option is just to ignore it. So take our diagnosis, put it over here. So we never, it's kind of like you have homework to do that you forever have to do. And if you just skip your homework, it's just going to sit over there. Except the homework is going to get harder and harder to do when you inevitably have to do it at some point, because you forget about it, you don't have the knowledge, you don't want to think about it, and it just sort of becomes this burden, when if you just tackle it right now, just rip the Band-Aid off. So, when I first got diagnosed, I was very curious. What is the herpes stigma? How common is herpes? Do I have to believe this? Does my lifestyle align with what society says? And even if it does, is it about herpes or is it about my lifestyle? So, let's just break this down logically. People on planet Earth have sex. Your dad had sex, your priest had sex, your dog probably had sex. Everyone is doing this, okay? I don't necessarily think that sex, whether it's in a marriage or whether it's with some random person that's consensual that you met at the bar, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that situation. Because people are going to argue on either side, oh, you shouldn't do that, or you should have waited, or just live your life. It's going to be over soon. Life is so short. Live your life. So, I don't think sex is inherently good or bad. I don't think anybody's lifestyle is either good or bad. There's just lessons to be learned, and you do you. We have a virus, okay? HSV1 and HSV2. Permanent viral infections in your nervous system, just like the other herpes viruses. The one that causes chickenpox, the one that causes shingles, Epstein-Barr virus, HHV6A and B, HHV7, Kaposi sarcoma herpes virus. Is that all of them? Cytomegalovirus. Wow. An entire family of viruses that establish permanent latent infections in your nervous system, but yet we've built up a whole narrative and a whole story around number 1 and number 2. Oh, but don't worry. HSV1, if you got that as a kid, you're totally normal. But if you get HSV1 down here, you're a slut. That was one of the biggest, things that didn't make sense when I got diagnosed, is ignore HSV2. Put that over there. There's a stigma around HSV2, predominantly because it's mostly passed sexually, almost always passed sexually. Very rare cases where you can get it non-sexually, but it goes beyond anyone's desire to look into that anymore. Like if you're just a regular person, you're not going to analytically use ChatGPT to figure out how could someone scientifically get HSV2 non-sexually because I care. No, I'm going to go back to like doom scrolling if I'm someone that doesn't have herpes. So I basically realized that like we live in a world where the most amount of herpes isn't even called herpes, it's called a cold sore. There is a association with herpes with sexually transmitted, even though more herpes is passed non-sexually. There is a lack of disclosure for HSV1. And basically, like, after I got over the initial shame of like, this is so bad, I don't know how to change my beliefs, I really had a lot of questions and a lot of anger because I almost felt like I was the only person. Like I wanted to make a speech, but nobody would listen. I wanted to just like get up on a stage and be like, so wait, why am I supposed to disclose genital herpes when there's no outbreak? Why am I supposed to do that? But everybody out there who's ever had a cold sore, and this is not to shame people that have cold sores. Like I'm just trying to shift the perspective that like the disclosure rules don't apply the same for oral herpes. And everybody could say like, oh, because it's not a big deal. I don't know if everybody wants to voluntarily sign up for like bumps on their lip, even if it's like once or twice as a kid. Like I don't necessarily want HSV1 in the same realm as I don't necessarily want HSV2. And it just like, when you present these points, there isn't really like a good argument. Oh, because it's so common. I always had this idea, it's like, is HSV1 so incredibly common because it's not disclosed? Or is it not disclosed because it's incredibly common? And the next question on both of the HSVs is like, how can we actually avoid HSV? I'm going to go on a lot of tangents in this video, but it's probably going to be a long one. Because the other funny thing is like, I see a lot of people out there who, they say I would never date somebody with herpes or anybody with that. There was a comment, maybe I'll put it on the screen, where it's like, you're wrong, bro. Anybody that doesn't have herpes would never risk it with someone who does. And when I actually wanted to respond, be like, oh, I'm offended, but I didn't, because in my head, I reframed that entire comment as people that don't have herpes wouldn't date someone who discloses to them. Now, I'm not going to cope, but people who disclose are typically safer than those who don't even know that they have it. And coming from my perspective, the guy who speaks to a lot of people with herpes every day, the vast majority of people are getting herpes from someone who doesn't know they have it, doesn't disclose, doesn't even realize they have symptoms. It's not typically like, hey, Pickering Fitness, I just got diagnosed. My partner disclosed to me. Now, maybe I'll be devil's advocate. Maybe those people are aware of the risk and like they're aware. They don't take it as hard. I don't know. There's all sorts of like, devil's advocate things I do in my head because I want to make sure I'm not the coping with herpes guy. Everybody should have herpes. No, don't get herpes. I don't want more DMs. But if you do want some help with your diagnosis, there's a free video in the description box, a 3-step process I walk my coaching clients through. Check it out if you're interested. But I just think that herpes is inevitable as a risk. We've built this up to be a super big stigma around something that is predominantly about sexual shame, and I don't personally think there's anything wrong or right or blah 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 with having sex. You can get it from your first partner. You can sleep with 1,000 people and not get herpes. It really is just up in the air. And one of the other crazy things I used to think about is like the fear and the shame that comes along with a herpes diagnosis. Like you go on Google and you type in like, I guess genital herpes diagnosis, and you see Google saying like there's associated feelings of like shame and fear and all sorts of stuff like that. And I get that because it's like what has happened before. But I almost think that like, sometimes, this is the way I want to approach a new diagnosis now is like, what if we just didn't make it a big deal? What if we didn't try to make it into a therapy session? What if we're just like, no, no, like, no worries, bro. Like, no worries, sis. You got this. It's totally going to be okay. Like, some people might not want to date you, but that's okay. And almost like, okay, this is like when you have kids. I don't have any kids that I know of. There's like two kinds of parents. There's like parents where the child falls down, scrapes their knee, and their parents are like, "Oh my God, you're gonna be okay. Oh, you're gonna be okay." Like, oh, yeah. And they're like, "It's okay, it's okay, it's okay." And then there's parents where like the kid falls down, and they like the kid's like a little bit upset, and then the parents like laugh, and they're like they laugh and they clap, and they're like, "You got this, bro. Like you." I don't know. And I always see that like maybe the kind of like making it into less of a big deal, not going so emotional, is actually going to benefit people more so than like, okay, this is going to be tough. I know you feel bad right now. Almost like if we invalidate the negative feelings, we can almost like short circuit them and then move on to better thoughts. Because at the end of the day, I have this virus for the rest of my life, but there's not a day that goes by where I like regress. And I guess we can move into the second part of the brainwashing, which is like how it makes us feel, how it affects our confidence. And I'm going to speak from a guy's perspective because that's all I really know. I think that when I got diagnosed, I always had the idea of like, I do not know if anybody is going to reject me. So I always get messages where it's like, I'm afraid of the rejection, or dating is going to be harder, or yada, yada, yada. And this always typically happens before someone starts dating again. And I want to urge people to ask themselves, like, maybe it won't be harder. The first person I ever disclosed to, it was successful. And I went on a few dates before that person and didn't even get to a point of disclosure, because dating and finding a connection, or like finding the spark with someone, is incredibly difficult. Now, maybe I'm just picky, but I also believe that if you are dating, if you are looking for a partner, you should be incredibly picky. It is not a bad thing to be choosy about the person you possibly are going to be intimate with or spend the rest of your life with, or blah, 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 blah. So you don't have to tell anybody that you don't actually like. And I think that was the case for me. It was like, let me go and find a person I like, and then I'll tell them and I'll see what happens. Now, I think that some part of me at the beginning went through the process of like, okay, I got to deal with this. I got to get educated. I got to figure out the proper facts, not just what we've been afraid to look up online or been told by our doctor. Because our doctors don't really care. Like, our doctors, like, it's not a big deal, but then society says we're a slut. So, I don't know. So if I'm going to reprogram you for that, HSV1 and HSV2 are in more people on planet Earth than are not. You can get it sexually, you can get it non-sexually. There's a small chance of transmission when there is no symptoms present, but that's inevitable as a sexually active risk. Don't have sex during an outbreak. If you have any suspicious symptoms, burning or tingling or itching, don't have sex. Live your life otherwise, and assume that there isn't a huge chance of transmission the majority of the time. You can use protection if you want, you can take daily antivirals, but you should never feel like you are the only risk on planet Earth, which is sometimes what society makes us believe, is like, oh, herpes is so incredibly rare, but literally more people have HSV1 or 2 than don't. They could both be passed sexually. No one's disclosing. And if you're a good enough person and you want to be honest and you want to attract a partner who likes you for you, they're going to see that in you. And anybody who gives you an ignorant response or rejects you blindly or doesn't want to learn more is not worth your time. Which goes into that second point, which is like, this doesn't define your worth. And the best thing to do post-diagnosis to like reprogram your mindset and reprogram some of the fears that you have around like living with this is ask yourself like, well, what is the story that I'm telling myself right now about having herpes? I just can't deal with the fact that it's for life. Well, what is going to be for life? Really? Are the outbreaks for life? I've literally had like 38 outbreaks. But I want to tell you that, like, it doesn't matter. You still can live your best life with 38 outbreaks. Now, you're not going to have 38 outbreaks. You know, you can take medication, or you're probably not going to have that many. But the shame is not for life, because the shame is in our control. The rejection isn't for life. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say this. If you tell 100 people, or even if you tell 50 people, or even if you literally tell 20 people, you will find someone who still wants to date you. Now, unless you're the ugliest person in the world and have nothing to offer and you completely mess up your diagnosis and blah, 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 you are still going to find someone who wants to date you. Statistically speaking, dating is a numbers game. Now, the problem there is, like, if you want to meet 20 people that you really want to disclose to, you probably have to meet a lot more than that. And I actually think that maybe the fear of dating holds people back post-diagnosis from playing the numbers game. So I think you can, like, if you're a guy and you have a logical brain, or you're a girl and you like logical brains, you can, like, statistically think about it as, like, well, what are the chances of, like, me meeting someone I have a spark with? Maybe, like, you know, I don't know, 1 in every 5 to 10 people, but then they might run away, or they might have stuff with their ex, or yada, yada, yada. So if I have to, you know, meet 20, 30, 40 people, whether this is like in a month, whether this is in a year, then I can find some people to disclose to and actually get to that point of disclosure. But that has to come from the ability to go and date. So programming you to get back into dating can also be broken down into a couple other, like, sub niches, where it's like, you cannot be judged, you cannot be shamed, you cannot be afraid of someone's response once you disclose when you're dating, as long as you build back the story that you tell yourself about herpes into something neutral or something positive or something that doesn't mean anything. Because if you say that, well, I have herpes, which means I am dirty and gross and disgusting and a slut, when you encounter someone who reinforces those beliefs, who's still holding on to their own stigma around herpes, you'll believe that. You'll run away. And on another side tangent here, one of the best ways to think about this is think about all of the things that you could be rejected for. I've literally been rejected for my zodiac sign. I don't date Aquariuses. Oh, well, that's what you are? Your moon is in Aquarius and your Uranus? Like, no, girl. Who cares? Whether you want kids or not, whether you're allergic to dogs, your skin color, your religion, your lifestyle, your job, your body weight, your height as a 5'5" male with genital herpes and previously had erectile dysfunction. I should not be in the position I'm in where I'm telling people how to live their life, how to actually date. I should have given up. I literally should have given up by now. There's no way that I should still be confident. I don't know. But there's hope for you then. But yeah, like, think about all the things you could be rejected for and ask yourself, if you got rejected for those things, would you feel bad? Would you feel ashamed? I told the story before about a coaching client I had. She was a single mom, and at the beginning she might have felt a little bit ashamed about being a single mom and, like, telling guys, because it could have been a deal breaker, even more so than herpes, because there's no chance that you don't have kids if you're a single mom, but there is a chance someone never gets herpes even if you have herpes. And I asked her, like, well, how did you, like, are you ashamed now? She's like, no, it's totally fine. That's the same thing with herpes. It's like, this doesn't mean anything for you. It doesn't define your worth. It's incredibly common. You're doing the due diligence of it, like, being honest with your partner and letting them know they could be at risk with you and how you can take precautions. And if they're like, oh no, I already know everything there is to know about herpes, that's so gross, you're disgusting, you just honestly shift from, yeah, you're right, to, what kind of a response is that? Like, I'm literally telling you. You can go out there with the next person and sleep with them and get it because they don't know they have it or they don't care. And it's like this reframe from shame to empowerment where you actually feel good, and then you can almost, like, shift into that third reprogramming step, which is the whole disclosure piece. And this is like literally the 3-step process I work with my coaching clients through, because in this specific order, at least for me and for the people I've worked with, this is how you actually break free from that stigma and go and date confidently. Because in step 1 was you believe the stigma is nonsense. It's based around sex and we're all having sex. And you have the knowledge that you aren't the only person with herpes and you can inform partners and keep them safe. So that's that first part. And then you can go into the self-worth, the confidence, because it simply means nothing that you have herpes. You had sex, or you didn't even have sex, and you got a virus, and it's incredibly common, and you're telling your partner how to keep safe in a world where the majority of people have it. Another point, you either have HSV1, or you can get HSV1 here or there from other people with HSV1. And that was always the crazy thing, where it's like you either should be disclosing that you have HSV1 if you know, or 60% of the world can give you genital HSV1. Whether you ever get it or not is besides the point, but the risk is there. So you build back that confidence, you build back your self-worth, you stop being so mean to yourself, you reframe all your negative thoughts and empower yourself with, I can still date, I can still disclose, the right person is going to like me for me, I still have all of these things to offer. And these are all like processes you can go through in step 2, which is building back your self-worth, defining yourself beyond your diagnosis, reducing the amount of importance you put on it. Because at the end of the day, if your herpes status matters more than your name or your job or I don't know, if it becomes the first thing you think about every day or the first thing you have to tell someone, you're putting so much importance on it when you are more than just your diagnosis. This doesn't define you. People that get cold sores, back to that idea, they don't define themselves by the fact that they get a blister on their lip. And another thing is like the whole label around STDs and STIs, where people are always like, I can't believe I got an STI. When it comes to herpes, you simply got a virus with the body parts involved in sex. And typically people are not having like skin to skin contact with their genitals non-sexually, unless me and the boys are playing like who's got a longer one, but that's only like once or twice a year at summer camp. Not anymore. Have a little laugh, okay? We're trying to keep this comedic. But yeah, so it just basically comes down to the body parts involved with sex, and sex is shamed by religion, by society, by Puritan culture. And I don't really want to live my life by any sort of guidelines. Like, obviously, I want to have some decency, some morals, live my life. But, if I die tomorrow, I don't want to die a virgin. And you don't have to hold on to the shame. And to go into that little piece a bit more, if you do kind of feel like you slept around or you were a slut and you got herpes, I want you to ask yourself and reframe, if you had that same lifestyle and didn't get herpes and then took some time to think about your lifestyle, would you still be ashamed of it? And oftentimes people will say like, well, maybe if I slept with like 1,000 people in 3 days and didn't get herpes, I would still kind of look at myself like, what are you doing? So in that case, it's not actually about the label of herpes. It's about the lifestyle. And what you can do now is use your diagnosis. Now, forewarning, don't get offended. Use your diagnosis as a pivot or a motivation to maybe shift life tracks, go down to something more meaningful if you felt like it was more meaningful. Because maybe some people do find meaning in like sleeping with a lot of people. And personally for me, there is like a sense of emptiness when I'm just with some random person or something, if there's no connection. And regardless of what anybody says, I think being with someone you actually care about and actually want to do things with is a lot better physically than someone random. So this might be the small little detour to put you back on a better life path. So drop the label that comes along with having an STI. Look at your diagnosis as a simple, common virus that most of planet Earth gets at some point in their life, whether they know it or not, whether they have symptoms or not, and realize that how you got it doesn't matter to yourself, even if society thinks it matters. Then, reprogramming yourself for disclosure realizing that instead of nobody disclosing, we should have everybody disclosing. We should have 66% and 13% and crossover and 70% of the world disclosing. And I want you to try to reprogram your mind to think that everybody is disclosing, okay? Because I know a lot of us want to say like, oh, well, why should I disclose? Why should I even do that? And I agree. To be totally honest, I would not have a business helping people overcome their diagnosis if we didn't disclose. And it's actually really crazy to think about, because should I just be telling people don't have sex during an outbreak and don't disclose? I don't know. I think about it every day. Or do I want to try to like move mountains and move the world and shift people into a perspective where we're encouraging education and disclosure for both oral and genital, and like consent and informing partners about the actual risks and the reality of herpes? But at the end of the day, I'm just one small person yapping with a microphone. And I can't change everyone's perspective. I can't change years of religion and culture and sexual lack of liberation and stuff. But maybe I can change some people who are diagnosed to see the world for what it truly is and open your mind and realize that it doesn't actually help to go down what everyone else is doing, to not buy into, to buy into the stigma long term and to believe you're unworthy of love. You know, you almost have to feel like an imposter. You have to go against what everybody else is doing. You have to almost like not give a shit what anybody else thinks, because you know deep down that you're living your truth. So when you think about disclosure after those first two steps, you believe that everybody should be disclosing. You believe that disclosure should be happening in most dating scenarios if people are going to be intimate. You believe that you're doing the right thing. You believe that by being honest with your partners, the right person is going to be like, wow, thank you so much for being honest. That's not even really a big deal. How can we keep safe? And a little thought exercise here. Whenever you have like a spiral, a doom spiral, is that even a word? Doom spiral? Whenever you're spiraling out of control mentally, you're thinking about the what ifs and the worst case scenarios of disclosure and a bad reaction. I want you to stop, reframe, close your eyes, visualize a disclosure going well. Visualize yourself saying like, hey, before we get physical, let's talk about sexual health. It's important to me, or I have to tell you something, or blah, 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 blah. Scripts don't matter. It's the mindset that actually matters. And imagine your partner being like, oh, herpes? Isn't that super duper common? Like, thanks for telling me. Like, I don't really know much about that, but like, can you tell me more? And I truly believe, like, if someone likes you on a date or wherever, and you have a connection, and they want to learn more just out of curiosity, I'm going to be controversial now. I don't know if I would ever date a trans person, just because, like, I don't know if I would, but I'm extremely curious about a lot of it, you know, about everything. That's going to sound ignorant, but like, I'm just curious to learn more about every person, every person's life, every aspect of life. And I think the same would come true when it comes to herpes, where if you have someone who isn't ignorant, who's curious, who likes you for you, who has a good connection, who isn't like turned off by like just having a conversation, and you're able to inform them and maybe reduce some of the fears that we all have about herpes, that's the kind of person you want to be with. So if you have someone who's like, nope, I already know what there is to know about herpes, it's disgusting, no, goodbye. Are you missing out on that person? Are you missing out? And can you, in your own head on that date or that disclosure, reframe it and say, this person doesn't even want to learn enough so that they can be safer with the next person. And you can actually, like, in some really sadistic way, be like, ha ha ha, I hope they get herpes from the next person. But it's true. So the disclosure piece is, it should be happening in most scenarios. You're doing a good thing by being honest. And you can frame it as a mutual conversation about sexual health, and people who want to learn more, people who like you for you, people who've already dated somebody before with herpes, or people who already know how incredibly common it is, and that it's a risk in society. It's not included on STI panels and yada, yada, yada. And that it's not this huge, like, I don't know, black sheep, or it's not worse than HIV, which people think is true. They're like, oh, herpes, that's worse than AIDS. And it's like such an ignorant response based from surface level thinking or what they've been made to believe. And some people are ignorant and get lucky and never get herpes, and some people are ignorant and they find out the hard way. And they message me, hey, Pickering Fitness, just got diagnosed. Can you help me? No, leave me alone. Figure it out yourself. So that's sort of a long-winded approach of like how to reprogram your mind. Because we've been programmed originally to think that we are the only person in the world with a dirty, disgusting STI. We slept around, even if we got it from our monogamous partner who didn't even know they had it, who had it from a cold sore or something. And we have been programmed to make it the butt of all jokes. We have been programmed to define ourselves by our diagnosis. We have been programmed that we have to have a warning label on our head, or we have to blink, or that it's the worst case scenario, or that it's like burning all the time 24/7, or that it's totally different than cold sores. And you know, it is going to take a little bit of effort to reprogram your beliefs, but once you reprogram them the same way you have been programmed, you never look back. You know, you got to ask yourself, are the beliefs and all the habits and the thoughts and the actions, are they keeping me stuck, or are they the habits and thoughts and actions of the person I want to be? And when it comes to disclosure, once you build back that self-worth, you reframe it as something that should be done all the time with every partner. When someone is like, oh, I've never been disclosed to before, that's so disgusting, you honestly look at them and say, really? You've never been disclosed to? It's literally like most people have this. And that's coming from the perspective that oral HSV1, cold sores, should be disclosed. Okay, because people with genital type 1, people with genital type 2 feel the same stigma. And people with genital type 1 are not getting it from someone with HSV2. They're getting it from someone who has it here, who may not even know that it could be passed that way. So if you need to go and rewatch this video a few times, because it was all over the place, please go ahead and do that. If you have any other insights yourself, or there's a particular insight from this video that helped, leave it in the comment below. And if you do want some help with your diagnosis, getting rid of shame, making disclosure effortless, attracting a loving partner, there's a free video in the description box, a 3-step process, and we can book a call from there. I'll see you guys in the next video.